Welcome back to PC-98 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-98, the most popular Japanese PC series of the early 1990s. Tenchi Muyo is a Japanese phrase used to mean this side up, but it can also be translated as no need for Tenchi. That's the joke, and that's the name of one of the most well-known anime series of the 1990s. Though it wasn't the first ever harem anime, it was certainly one of the main series to define the genre. Outside of Japan, this was basically the OG harem anime, when most of the world was discovering anime for the first time in the 90s. So this is a show about a seemingly typical Japanese high school boy named Tenchi, who is suddenly surrounded by girls from outer space who are all in love with him for some reason. The typical adolescent fantasy. But even if the term harem anime makes you cringe, don't be quick to write the series off, cause Tenchi Muyo has a lot going for it, including a universe with its own lore and a unique traditional Japanese aesthetic to it. And besides, the series can often be simply laugh out loud hilarious. If you're not familiar with the series, I'm going to do my best to make this still an enjoyable video, while also avoiding any major spoilers for the anime. There were a few different video games based on the series, but today we're looking at the very first Tenchi game, released in 1994. This is one of 3 PC-98 games made by AIC Spirits. 2 years ago, I made a video about the Slayers game, and by the way, since making that video, the game has received an English patch, though you might recall that in the video I didn't really recommend the game. Neither of the other 2 games have English patches for any version as of now. Maybe someday I can also do the Oh My Goddess game on PC-98 Paradise, but today we're doing Tenchi, which was later ported to the PC Engine and PC-FX. Back in the 90s, I was a fan of Tenchi, the PC Engine, and the PC-FX, so I actually played both console versions of this game quite a bit, and can tell you all about them. The original PC-98 version, though, I didn't obtain until the mid-2000s when I started PC-98 collecting. And though I do remember installing and starting it up a few times, I haven't really played it. The reasons, of course, being that I had already played the other 2 versions enough, and also because the PC-98 version lacks the voices performed by the original voice actors, which do so much to bring the game to life. But nevertheless, today I'm going to play through the original version on PC-98 Paradise. So let's get to it. The packaging is exactly like the Slayers game. It comes in a black case covered by a cardboard sleeve. Let's carefully slide it out and open up the case. Inside we have a survey card. The outside of the manual again is a folded over version of the outside cover illustration. Quite a bit of the manual is in color, with some very cool illustrations of the characters, including some original characters for the game. The game itself is stored on 9 floppy disks. That's a lot of graphics. The installation process is also the same as the Slayers game. The manual asks you to first create a folder on your hard drive named Tenchi, and then to copy either the batch installer or exe file from disk F of the game. I used the exe file. You then run the exe from its new location, while also specifying the drive letter of the floppy drive you're using for the installation. The installer will guide you through the rest of the process for inserting each floppy disk to copy all the data. When it's done, you search all over in the newly created folder on your hard drive for a file named tenchi.bat. Of course, it's a lot faster to just type Tenchi from the DOS prompt rather than using a file explorer like I am here. The game has sort of an approximation of the opening from the first Tenchi OVA series, complete with an FM sound rendition of the theme, one of the few tracks that isn't original to the game, by the way. So for fans who care about these things, this game is based on the OVA series, not the TV series or any of the other Tenchi canons, though I kind of doubt many fans would consider this game to be canon at all. Besides Tenchi himself, the main characters of the series include Ryoko, a space pirate who is imprisoned as a demon for 700 years at Tenchi's grandfather's shrine. She can fly, walk through walls, shoot lasers from her hands, and cool stuff like that. Tenchi accidentally awakening Ryoko from her slumber is the catalyst which causes Ayaka to come looking for her on Earth. Ayaka is a princess from the planet Jurai, a kingdom that was attacked long ago by Ryoko and whose spaceships are living trees. Ayaka's tendency to be proud and arrogant gets her constantly into fights with the more ill-mannered and aggressive Ryoko, usually over who's going to get Tenchi. Ayaka also brings along her younger sister, Sasami, who despite her playful personality, is the most mature and level-headed character. Sasami even cooks the meals for all the girls living at Tenchi's house. Usually together with Sasami is Ryo-ohki, whose name is also the subtitle of the series. She's a cute sort of cat-rabbit creature who also transforms into Ryoko's spaceship. Then there's also Mihoshi, who's an airheaded and bumbling detective from the Galaxy Police, and Washu, who is one of the greatest geniuses in the universe, but with a joking and fairly self-serving personality. The opening also shows one original friendly character for the game, and 2 original villains. We'll talk about them when we get to them. But now that everyone knows who the main characters of the series are, let's go back to the first opening of the game that I actually skipped over. It's a scene taken directly from the series, where Mihoshi crash lands and destroys Tenchi's house. The game actually takes place between the first 2 seasons of the OVA series, and calls itself Episode 7.5. This is during the period when Tenchi's dad, who is an architect, is building them a new house, and the characters have to live in an exact replica of the old house inside Washu's laboratory, which is like a portal to another dimension. So finally on the title screen we'll choose to start from the beginning rather than load. In this game you take the role of Tenchi, and here he's getting up in the morning. Sasami asks Tenchi to go call everyone down for breakfast. We can then leave Tenchi's room and go to the main navigation menu, where we can move to different rooms around the house. Mihoshi's room, Washu's lab, Ryoko's room, the hallway, Ayaka's room, Tenchi's father's study, the living room, the bathroom, the bathhouse, outside, or the vegetable field. Clicking anywhere else on screen will bring up a sub-menu where you can save and load your game or change a number of settings. To give a fairly typical example of the kind of scenarios you'll see in this game, let's first select Ryoko's room. Ryoko, as fans of the series know, is by far the most sexually aggressive character who is always trying to get herself alone with Tenchi so she can seduce him. And here you can choose to have Tenchi do things that are totally out of character, like having him agree to kiss her, but he rarely actually goes through with anything that's too far out of character. He'll make a bunch of excuses not to, and Ryoko will remind him that he just chose the kiss option. This game is constantly breaking the fourth wall, by the way, which can be really funny. Tenchi has to remind her here that this isn't an adult game. Ayaka eventually joins the scene, and she and Ryoko get into one of their typical fights. Sasami comes to remind everyone that breakfast is getting cold and tells Tenchi to just leave them fighting. They'll stop when they get hungry. So we then get to one of the few required scenes of the game, where everyone is eating breakfast. Sasami and Mihoshi comment that it's weird no one is sitting on the other side of the table, and Washu reminds them that they're not supposed to talk about that. We get a menu where we can talk to any of the characters, but the only one we need to talk to progress is Mihoshi. She apologizes for destroying the house and starts crying, and Tenchi and the other characters tell her not to worry about it. Oh yeah, Tenchi's dad will just build them a new house. In real life this would be a huge problem. Since Washu seems capable of just about anything, it's too bad she didn't just make them an actual copy of the house in its original place instead of a virtual one. Looking for plot holes and inconsistencies in this series is an endless rabbit hole, by the way, so don't do it. This scene ends when Ryoko and Ayaka get into another one of their fights, over who gets to feed Tenchi by hand. Tenchi just walks away as usual. So we're back to the navigation menu. If you click on a room where there's currently nothing happening, you'll just get a few lines of dialogue before returning to the menu. Basically, the idea is just to find scenarios and watch them play out. When a scenario finishes, you'll see this eye catch screen, which signifies the passage of time. You'll then move on to the next block of time for the current day, which has a whole new set of scenarios to find. While the game is played entirely with the mouse, it isn't a point-and-click game per se, since there are no objects to interact with. No items, no finding the thing and bringing it to the place. You just watch and read scenarios, making menu-based decisions here and there which will affect the outcome. So it isn't an adventure game, but definitely not a visual novel either. The game calls itself a digital comic, and I'd say that most accurately describes what the game is. I'm sure most of the English-speaking Tenchi fans who imported this one for their Turbo Duo back in the day tried it for a while and then groaned as they realized, oh no, it's one of these, before turning it off. But as digital comics go, this is probably one of the better ones I've played. I've no doubt learned a lot of Japanese from the voiced on-screen dialogue in the CD-ROM versions, and I remember even trying to get all 3 endings. But obviously there really isn't anything here for non-fans of the series. But wait, this is cool. In the manual there's a fascinating page on how they made the graphics in this game. The process begins with storyboarding, and then an artist does a sketch for each graphic. Then the art director will trace over all of those sketches made by multiple artists to try to make them consistent and in line with how the characters are supposed to look. Then in what they call the movie step, they frame it how they expect it to look in the game, and add in the remaining shading and lines. Next they make a version which only has clearly defined outlines and scan it into the PC-98. The raw scan is of course going to look terrible, so a CG graphic artist has to clean up all the lines and make it look good in pixel art. The graphic is then digitally painted with solid colors, and finally they skip here to the finished graphic which has all the shading added back in. Wow, that was a lot more steps than I thought. There's plenty more original art to see too in the separately sold art book for the game. I also have to point out this comment in the manual from one of the programmers known simply as Fumihiro. It's just so timely for 1994. He says, "This is the absolute limit of what we can do with 16 colors in a floppy disk-based game. Next time a hard drive is going to be required to play at the very least. If you don't have one, buy one now, and I recommend getting a DOS-V. DOS-V was the term used at the time in Japan to refer to what we now know as plain old PCs, which we used to run Windows. People would ask, do you have a PC-98 or a DOS-V, just like we say Mac or Windows. So this game was made when a lot of people were starting to make the switch from PC-98, and this guy was absolutely right to put his money on DOS-V. Though I sure would have loved to see the alternate history where PC-98 took over the world. Anyway, here's another scenario that you'll be forced to watch if you play the game. I tried my best to get past it during my second playthrough, but to no avail, and these grayed out areas mean that I've already tried that location and there was nothing there, so we absolutely have to watch the scenario at the bathhouse to move on. In this one, Tenchi tries to clean the bath, thinking that there's no one inside. But surprise, surprise, there is someone. Tenchi and Ayaka then hear Ryoko coming inside too, and Ayaka suggests that Tenchi hides in her bathwater. So Tenchi has to hold his breath until Ryoko's gone. You get to decide whether Tenchi is having trouble holding his breath or not, and I decided that he is. As he coughs a bunch of air bubbles up to the surface, Ryoko thinks that Ayaka must have farted in the bath. And eventually Ayaka has no choice but to go ahead and say that she did indeed fart, in order to keep hiding Tenchi. When Ryoko leaves, Tenchi is half drowned, but quickly comes to, so it looks like Tenchi is off the hook, until Sasami promptly comes in and finds them both there, followed shortly after by Ryoko, who has come back after rightly thinking that the earlier interaction with Ayaka was a bit weird. So this is the typical Tenchi comical ending where all their efforts amount to nothing. But the scene isn't over, and this is actually one of the parts where Tenchi can die and get game over. If you choose to stay and watch Ayaka and Ryoko fight, apparently they make such a big explosion in the bathhouse, it kills Tenchi. On the game over screen you'll see Tsunami. If you're not a fan of the show, without getting into spoilers, we'll just say that Tsunami is a grown-up version of Sasami, who plays a part in the series. Anyway, Tsunami says that she'll turn back time for Tenchi, and we get taken back to the beginning of the scenario, to make better decisions this time. Speaking of decisions, there's a very difficult Tenchi Muyo quiz that you can find in Washu's lab, but even if you can manage to get all 10 questions right, you only get a quote-unquote nude image of Washu, which isn't really nude, but I won't take my chances since some might think she looks like a minor. She's at least 20,000 years old though. I'm sure you're all wondering, though, if there are actually any scenarios that take place in the bathroom, and in fact there is one scene where Ryoko tricks Tenchi into walking in on Ayaka, and another one where Ryoko takes Tenchi through the wall into the bathroom with her so that they can be alone, only to be interrupted by Washu, who pops out of the toilet. She reminds them that this entire house is just a recreation made by her, so she has eyes everywhere. There's another scenario where for some stupid reason Washu makes a robot version of Kagato, the villain from the first season. Mihoshi ends up pressing something and of course the robot attacks. It will chase Tenchi around the house until he goes outside where he can fight it. You can choose what part of its body you want to hit, and most of the time it just says he blocked it or it had no effect. I hate these stupid menu puzzles in these games. I kept dying and Tsunami had to send me back. Eventually, after you finally do what the game wants, a fifth choice appears which says switch, and you can switch him off and win. Well then just give me that option in the first place instead of wasting my time. So anyway, this was at the end of a couple of days looking for scenarios, and a screen with Mihoshi pops up to tell you that you've completed the first half of the game. Wow, this is actually going to be a pretty short game. She continues to explain that the second half is divided into 3 different routes, A through C, and that based on the particular scenarios I happened to find in the first half, I've been assigned Route C. It's actually pretty nice of the game to explain it so clearly. Anyway, I proceeded to finish Route C, which is kind of the joke route and is really short. So then I decided to go ahead and try to get all 3 routes for this video, which actually took me only a couple of days to do. Though I did end up having to play through the first half of the game 4 times, since I got Route B twice. Days later, my art book arrived, which includes a full walkthrough. Anyway, I'm going to summarize the plot of all 3 routes, but first let's go over some of the events which aren't specific to the plot of any particular route. Immediately after the Mihoshi screen where you find out which route you got, we're taken to a scene in outer space aboard the cruiser of a galaxy police detective named Hakua Suzuki, an original character for the game. She's barely any more competent as a detective than Mihoshi, but has a strong sense of justice. She reminds me a lot of the character Amelia from Slayers, but that's probably partly because she's played by the same voice actor. For some reason, she totally idolizes Mihoshi. She went to the same Galaxy Police Academy that she did, and has heard about all the cases Mihoshi has been given credit for. She wants to be just like her someday. Anyway, she's learned here that a wanted criminal has fled to the nearby planet, Earth, and she eagerly takes up the case. But the real reason she goes is because she knows that Mihoshi is there. After playing a scenario or 2 in the second half of the game, the gang will learn about the approaching Galaxy police ship and go out to investigate. Hakua immediately hugs Mihoshi, but Mihoshi doesn't remember her at all from police school. Hakua gets too excited by all the new people around and falls asleep, which she has a tendency to do, and right into Tenchi's arms, angering Ryoko and Ayaka. Anyway, she gets taken back to her ship to rest. When you get control of the game again, you can choose to have Tenchi go check on her at her ship, but we won't really learn anything here other than the fact that she's perfectly healthy but just sleeps a lot. There's another scene where Tenchi can end up stuck in the bathhouse with Mihoshi and Hakua, and another one where Hakua and Tenchi share a conversation under the stars. And of course, just like all the other girls in the series, she falls in love with Tenchi. But now let's put a spoiler warning before summarizing the 3 different routes in the second half of the game. These are only going to be spoilers for this game, and not the anime series, by the way. Let's start with the silly route, Route C. In this one, Tenchi meets a strange guy trying to steal carrots from his vegetable field named Himuro. We get another pointless menu fight where Tenchi can punch the thief in the face or other body parts. Eventually, Ryo-ohki turns into a ship and attacks him. They end up forgetting about him and leaving him there when they then notice Hakua's ship landing for the first time. Later on, we learn that the criminal Hakua is looking for isn't wanted for any major felonies, but is instead guilty of over 20,000 petty crimes. She doesn't have a photo, but draws Tenchi a composite, and sure enough, it's Himuro. You then have to lead Hakua to the vegetable field to find him, but if you want, you can screw around and go other places instead. If you go to Hakua's ship, she says, "Oh, I see, he's trying to use my ship to get away," and Mihoshi says, "No, that only happens in Route A." Finally, we find him in the field, and Hakua doesn't recognize him and says that he doesn't look anything like her drawing. Ryo-ohki is forcing him to work in the field in order to make up for those carrots he tried to steal earlier, so he's already no longer a threat and will be easy to arrest. Hakua says, "This is why I hate Route C, I get no chance to shine," and she just falls asleep. There's a goodbye scene for Hakua, which is a little different in each route. After an emotional goodbye, and good riddance from Ryoko and Ayaka since they don't like the competition for Tenchi, Hakua comes right back again saying the battery on her ship is dead. In Route B, the criminal Hakua is chasing is a space pirate and an old acquaintance of Ryoko's named Makibi, who terrorizes the nearby city of Kurashiki. That's the Ohara Museum of Art, by the way, the most recognizable landmark in Kurashiki. She commandeers a TV camera and tells Ryoko to come out and play. At first, Mihoshi and Hakua try to take on Makibi themselves, but of course do a terrible job of it. Ryoko seems strongly averse to the idea of seeing this Makibi again, but Tenchi eventually manages to convince her to take him to save the city. Tenchi has to fight two monsters in another lame menu battle, which this time even has HP, though I'm not sure if the game is actually keeping track of the HP or if it's just a joke. I guess I lost against the second monster, but Hakua steps in and actually saves the day. It turns out that Makibi is after Ryoko because she's in love with her, but Ryoko is not interested. Tenchi fights with Makibi and ultimately loses, but Makibi decides not to kill him, since of course, now like everyone else, she has fallen in love with Tenchi. She decides to leave Earth for now, but promises she'll be back.
Excellent Scooby-Doo ending.
Yeah, but I think we should do the mega happy ending.
Oh, the mega happy ending, that's doable.
In Route A, Himuro is the villain again, but this time he poses an actual threat. He manages to sneak into Washu's lab and steal Ayaka's tree ship, which is at this point just a seedling. Jurai trees are worth a fortune on the black market, Washu explains. The gang tries to stop Himuro from making his getaway in Hakua's ship, but Himuro takes Sasami hostage. They chase him into space aboard Ryo-ohki and get close enough for Ryoko to teleport Tenchi and Ayaka aboard the ship. Just when Himuro is about to send the three of them out the airlock, someone throws a chrysanthemum and saves them. The mysterious figure identifies himself as Jinja Man. Of course, we'll never know who this is or what this could possibly be a parody of, but this time in the farewell scene with Hakua, Tenchi's grandfather is present, and Tenchi happens to notice a chrysanthemum petal stuck to his clothes. After the farewell scene in each route, you have the credits sequence. I love how the credits BGM is a refrain of the main BGM. The music was composed by Shiori Ueno, who also did the music for the Slayers game, and some of you may remember that I raved about the music in that one. While Tenchi definitely sounds like it was composed by the same person, in my opinion it just doesn't have the same level of fun and catchy tunes. There's only one track that really sounds like it could be from the Slayers soundtrack. And since Tenchi doesn't use a commonly available sound driver like Slayers does, there's no way I'm aware of to figure out if there are any secret stereo FM tracks like Slayers has. Tenchi is in mono only, but at least the sound plays with no issues out of the box, unlike Slayers. The whole game, in fact, runs perfectly on my PC-98 without any fiddling at all. After the credits, there is one last scene that plays out no matter which route you took, where Tenchi's dad reveals their new house. Ryoko asks if he remembered to put a door between her room and Tenchi's like she asked, and Ayaka also reminds Tenchi's dad that she asked for her room to be next to Tenchi's. Tenchi's dad hasn't done either of these, but Ryoko and Ayaka overhear each other and the game ends with yet another fight. The game then goes to graphic viewer mode and says that even after playing through the game 3.5 times, I've still only found 76% of the graphics. It then proceeds to show you every single one of the large graphics you've found so far, which surprisingly doesn't really take that long. After that, you get a black screen, and if you wait here at least 1 minute before clicking, you'll get one last congratulatory screen. Tenchi's final words to the player are, "Please try not to make any weird choices for me next time," and the game finally kicks you back into DOS. The game was ported to the PC Engine a half a year later. Of course, the resolution is a lot lower than the PC-98, but to me, the addition of voices really makes all the difference. There are actually a number of other new additions though, such as a Tenchi plot summary at the beginning for those new to the series, and some added music by a different composer. I did also notice a line of dialogue or decision that had been changed here and there. I wouldn't be surprised if it even has a few brand new scenarios too. The mouse navigation menu has been replaced by a side view screen where you move Tenchi to your desired location, and saving and loading is performed by going to Tenchi's room. This is the version that I and most players have probably played the most, but it unfortunately isn't really the best version of the game. That title would have to go to the PC-FX version released the following year. The disc access for the voices is so much snappier, it really is a pleasure to play after the PC Engine version.
天地、どこ行ってたんだ？天地様、お父様の本でわからないところがあるんですけど。
And while the voice quality still isn't great by today's standards, lots of voices have been added so that almost every line of dialogue is voiced in this one. It also has a CG mode, sound test, and scene replay feature accessible from the title screen. Also, finally letting the player know which segment of the game they're currently on is an underrated and extremely useful feature for completionists. The background graphics are now in full screen. According to the back of the case, they took the original cells and rescanned them. It looks like most likely they painted them the old-fashioned way and then literally just scanned them in, giving the colors this grainy look. I remember it looking pretty good back in the day, but it's definitely a product of its time. Still, I maintain that this is the ultimate version of the game and the one to play today. And if you're still not convinced, then wait, there's more. The PC-FX version includes a second disc, which is essentially a brand new sequel to the game. It tells the story of Tenchi Muyo episode 9.8, when Hakua returns. And since this game was released when the TV series was popular, they also worked in Kiyone, who was a main character in the TV series. So this is a rare appearance of Kiyone in the OVA universe. This second disc plays even more like a pure digital comic, where you literally just watch it and make decisions occasionally. Most interestingly, rather than just playing as Tenchi, you take the perspective of a different character in each scene. The story is actually quite entertaining, and I totally recommend that Tenchi fans give it at least one playthrough, even if you haven't seen Hakua's first adventure, and regardless of whether you can understand the dialogue or just want to learn some Japanese. The game only takes about an hour and a half to play through, and then you've already seen just about all the game has to offer, since your decisions unfortunately have very little effect on the plot. So the second disc isn't much, but it's still a fine treat to enjoy while it lasts. Tenchi Muyo FX is actually a really nice package for fans, and is also one of the most commonly available PC-FX titles. Well, I have practically nothing left to say. Again, the first Tenchi Muyo game is really only for fans of the series, but is actually pretty fun and entertaining for a digital comic game based on a licensed anime property. Whether you choose the PC-98 version for the graphics or the PC-FX version for everything else, give it a try if you're interested. But for the rest of you, I hope you still enjoyed this look at a game you'll probably never play. After all, making videos about games most people will never play is what I do. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-98 Paradise. This video was requested by longtime patron Chris McGee. I'm happy he requested a game that's so easy for me to cover. And thanks as always to all other Patreon and YouTube members, and to everyone else still watching. And now for the best part of every video, where I turn up the music for the end card. Enjoy!